Hello and welcome to Bubble Hearthing. I'm Bubble and you're fantastic. Today we're going to be talking about all of the white cards coming up in the new set, the Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Really excited it's actually probably out already because I'm making this while it's already out in Arena, so there you go. But if you're looking to attend any sort of pre-releases or just want to see my opinions on it, here we are. Without further ado, we will begin with the +2 mace. We have an equipment here, costs 2, 3 to equipment, it gives +2/+2. Not too shabby. A lot of equipment these days that sees any play actually comes in equipped already, like the Embercleave and the whatchamacallit, the Sky Maul of the Skyclave. There we go. Yes. So that kind of removes a lot of value from anything that has to be equipped afterwards, and kind of, makes it seem not quite as good. But despite that, this is actually okay. Still in Standard, it's not going to see any play there because it's 5 mana to get +2/+2, a little slow. But in Limited, it's not too bad. It's a sizable buff too. Some of your creatures you can kind of carry it around. Just make sure you're running enough creatures to actually get some good use out of it. Moving onwards, Arborea Pegasus, a 4 mana 2/3, flying on enter the battlefield. Another creature gets flying and +1/+1 for the turn, which in Standard is too slow, of course. That's not going to see play there at all. You barely even see flyers as it is. But in Limited, this is actually okay. I don't see anything wrong with that. It could very easily, pardon me, give you the ability to, take your bigger creature or some other creature, gets a little more chip damage in there, at least buff something, and it's still in a turn, so you can't use that as a, I guess you can use this as a blocker afterwards if your opponent has a flyer. That's not bad, but make sure you have enough creatures, and this is not this probably isn't going to be the singular creature that wins you the game, so, try to get a few more things in there. Make sure you have enough critters. That's the primary thing in Limited. You need creatures, you need bodies to get the job done. Alright, in 3 mana we have a Blink Dog, 1/1 double strike with the little teleport, which is not a keyword. Remember, anything that is italicized, whatever direction it is actually flavor text or reminder text. Just a little something to kind of call back to Dungeons and Dragons and, a little nostalgia, a little reference there. I like it. But anywho, for 4 mana, it phases out. So phasing, as we know, is that all you can see that they're treated, and anything is attached to, as they don't exist until your next turn. So if it has any sort of equipment, any enchantments, they don't fall off, they don't just go to the graveyard, they just kind of go away with it, and then it comes back, saves itself from board wipes, if you will, or any sort of removal. So it's kind of nifty. Unfortunately, with the 1/1 body, even though it has double strike, it needs a lot to get going. Sure, if this thing gets enchanted or buffed, say you give it the +2 mace, and then they're going to kill it in response, and you phase it out. Okay, the mace still stays equipped to it, even though it's phased out, and then it comes back with the mace on there. So you don't have to repay that again, but it's still a lot to get a little thing going. So unless you have a decent amount of buffs and still other creatures, this again probably will not win you the game. It's not even a great blocker, honestly. For 3 mana, no. Limited, not so much. Kind of more like a 2/2 sort of 2 out of 5 sort of thing there. And in Standard, I don't think so. We have a few decks that do run dogs, namely Winota, and I don't think this actually kind of keeps up with those, unfortunately. Even though they do buff each other occasionally, I don't think it fits in. Celestial Unicorn, 3 mana, 3/2. Whenever you gain life, put a counter on Celestial Unicorn, +1/+1 in particular. So there's another Primate effect. We get quite a few of these every now and then, and they do decently well. There is one card in particular that exists in Arena, exclusively in Arena, that has that Primate effect. I think it's a 3 mana 1/1 as opposed to a 2 mana 1/1 in the actual Johnny's Primate card that I keep mentioning. So that card will see play about once every maybe 20 games. I see I'll run into someone running that sort of deck, and it can have explosive openings, certainly, but quite often, more often than not, it kind of just fizzles out, never quite gets there, and they're very vulnerable to board wipe. You gain life, cool, but gaining life isn't exactly a win con unless you have all the life. And I think it's actually better to run just the angels and things and kind of ignore the other life gain cards there. So that being said, I believe that this is not really playable in Standard at all. In Limited, you can give it a shot. I will give it a 1.5, maybe a 2 out of 5 if you have some life gain. If you don't have any life gain, there are better things to do with your 3 mana. Cleric class. Yes, we have class cards. So let's just address these very quickly. I will be addressing all the special mechanical new things coming out. So to this set in an intro video, more in-depth sort of thing for those specific mechanics, but not specific cards exactly. So this is going to be a look at each card, but not really the mechanic as a whole. So, Cleric class here, we have an enchantment, And for the first, level 1, I guess, entry-level ability, if you gain life, you gain that much +1 instead. Notably, this does not tick this up twice, it just exchanges the amount you would gain with one more. So if you have an effect that says gain 2 life, this replaces that with gain 3 life. Okay. Not too bad, but it doesn't really affect anything at all, so the first one is largely irrelevant, I would say. Someone might not like that, but I don't see that as worth much. So for 4 mana, you can bring it to level 2. Whenever you gain life, you put a counter on something you control. That's legitimate. That's nice that you have that just not in a single creature, but as an aura, so you can... Not as an aura. It's not exactly what I want to do, but as an enchantment for your whole board, so you don't add counters to everything, but you can add a counter to anything you control. Pretty good there. You still, of course, need more life gain synergy. This itself does not fuel that. It just helps the things that are already going. So you need to devote more cards to that. And it's like if you have a deck full of flyers, do you really want an enchantment that gives more flying? No, I just have flyers already. It's almost redundant. This kind of doubles down on that, which isn't terrible because not every creature you have is going to have this effect on it. But it needs a lot more work. All right. And for 5 mana, you actually get a lovely Reanimator effect. So, worth noting that you can only get to that level 3 one time, per cleric class you have on the board, I guess. So, yeah, you can't just, pay 5 mana this turn, though they kill my creature, okay, I'm gonna go to level 3 again. No, you're already level 3, that's it, you did it, you got there, congratulations. So, that sort of effect in limited, I think this is actually quite nice, even though you may have to invest 5 other mana, so a total of 10 to get there. At least the 1 mana you can kind of throw it around somewhere, you can squeeze it in. There's usually a mana that you don't use on some turn, from like, maybe turn 3 or 4 onward. And then beyond that, the 4 mana investment is tricky. It's not great, but the 5 should be a decent payoff. It's not terrible, but in limited, I would not consider this a bomb at all. I think it's okay, but it's not great. And in standard, we have Reanimator decks, but they kind of want to curve out pretty well, actually. They're pretty quick. Getting Velamonkus Lowerhold out as quickly as, what would it be, turn 4? Yes, that's actually pretty nice, and you do that if you have any of the things in the graveyard, then you use the attack from there to try to hit another reanimation effect. Either, I think it's called a Turn Up on the Tide, or... was it Unlikely Bond or something? I forget the one that adds a lifelink counter on it from Ikoria. But anyway, you try to attack with Velamonkus Lowerhold to find another reanimation to get another card that hopefully you manage to discard. To Prismari Command. It's a little strange, but it's actually very strong. This does not fit in that at all because, like I said previously, 10 mana total to get to that level 3. Takes a while. For that reason, I'm out. Cloister Gargoyle, a 3 mana 0/4 artifact. And I have a little thing here because this is our first venture card we're looking at. There are dungeons on the side there for reference. I'm just going to leave them up there for now. Just the artwork was nice, but now we actually have a little thing to remember it by. And again, I'm going to go into the different details for the dungeons and such in a different video. So, 3 mana 0/4. On entering the battlefield, you venture, which doesn't do a whole lot your first time, second, even third time. But I guess the 4th time you could be completing a dungeon, and if you've completed one, it gets +3/+0 and has flying. So is this a 3 mana 3/4 flyer in the right circumstances? In the best circumstances, yes, but under most circumstances, no. It's like a 3 mana 0/4. Maybe you make a little token, make a treasure, scry 1, gain a life here. Not all at once. These are separate things, and none of them quite add up to what we are looking for here. For a 0/4, what would I pay for that? About 1 mana, maybe 2. That's like a Walls, a Defender sort of thing. Granted, this doesn't have Defender or something, so you can actually buff it and attack with it early, but unless you have specifically a deck that wants an artifact or an artifact creature, I wouldn't use this, or if you just had like enough venture cards to kind of get there. But in limited, if you only have 4 venture cards, don't count on getting there, honestly. I wouldn't value them very highly at all, unless you have repeatable adventure like we're going to see coming up with, what's his name? Nashar, I think it is. And then there's a Yuan-Ti Malison, and there's a few things that can venture on attack. And we'll see. Or you can invest mana to venture again, just that way. So overall, I do not like this unless you're in a dedicated venture deck, and aside for a few niche cases where you kind of cheese the mechanic, and I don't think that like honest, fair adventuring is going to be a thing. I think that you're either gonna find some combo to just get through things insanely quickly, or you're gonna fall behind. So for that reason, standard, I think this is like, I'll give like a 1 out of 5 there. I think it'll see some play, I just don't think it's going to be particularly good, and it'll probably fall off pretty quickly. In limited, this is actually a lot worse, because having a 3 mana do nothing, like 3 mana make a blocker, is not a very strong effect at all, and you're going to be waiting like, oh, if I just complete this dungeon, then I can, no good, and you might fall into the trap of putting subpar cards into your deck just because they say adventure, because this one might become a 3/4. Not a fan. I think it's a trap. Dancing Sword. For 2 mana, you get an equipment. Yes, and the equipped creature gets +2/+1. Equipped for 1, which is actually pretty good. Basically, yes, all the Skyclaves cost 3. This is definitely weaker than all the Skyclaves, I would say. But overall, the same cost. 2 to play, 1 to equip, total 3. Okay. I don't hate that. When equipped creature dies, you may have this card, Dancing Sword, become a 2/1 construct with flying and ward 1. If you don't, if you do, it isn't an equipment. If you don't, then this just hangs out as the equipment again. So basically, if this becomes a creature, you can't equip the creature to another creature. It's some legacy level nonsense that we're not going to get into. But I actually like this card quite a bit. In standard, I think this could see some play, just because you put this on a creature, and if it dies, you don't have that unfortunate, like, sure, if you run out of creatures to equip in your hand, you played your board wipe. Well, at least I have this 2/1 flyer now. Ward 1's nice. It's not really fantastic, but there's no reason to, this definitely better than not having it. In limited, this card's really quite good. It might not win you the game, but also being able to give any creature you do, like, put on the board +2/+1 pretty readily. You'll often have that extra mana hanging out after you cast your creature. Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to say like 3.5, maybe even, 3.5 out of 5. In limited, of course, you need cards to equip. You need creatures. Never, always have creatures in your deck, and always have enough creatures. If you think you have enough creatures, add more creatures. Okay. If you don't think you have enough creatures there, maybe that's a removal, and then it's more creatures. Yeah. In standard, I could see this seeing some play. Certainly, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 there. I think it can definitely make some rounds. All right, Dawnbringer Cleric, and largely as a board wipe backup sort of thing. All right, Dawnbringer Cleric is a 2 mana 1/3 that does a few things that no one really cares about. So you can either gain 2 life, destroy an enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard. There's already a vampire card now that came out not too long ago. I don't know if it was a Quarry. I don't think so. I know it wasn't in Strixhaven. Regardless, it has the same sort of like pick 1 of 3 things to do, and one of them was exile a card, and I think the other one might have been like drain some life. It sees 0 play. I think it's actually poorly costed for the stats as well, whereas this is a little more on the fair side. Also, we have Charming Prince currently in standard that doesn't see much play outside of a few niche, subpar, enter the battlefield abuse like sort of thing to the Orient as well, and they're okay. They're kind of fun to play sometimes, and ultimately they're very lackluster and don't quite get there. And that's how I feel about this thing. If you're looking specifically for the destroy target enchantment, I feel like that's going to be quite often the best option on this card. Then, or at least it'll be the strongest. Usually exiling a single card isn't fantastic, but if you hit your opponents like, Ox of Agonis, or if you hit their Lurish that they can't bring back now with any sort of recursion, any sort of revival there, then you call the Death Well. There it is. There, that's the one. Then that could hurt them a bit, but I don't think this is the card that's going to do that. You have better options for exiling. Therefore, you have Cling to Dust, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, this card's pretty nasty. If you want, there are better things that can destroy enchantments, especially in white. That's kind of known for it. That's why it's on this card, but there's better cards that do it. Okay, standard 0 out of 5. Limited 1.5. You can go up to 2 out of 5 if you have any sort of life gain synergy. Otherwise, don't do it. 2 mana 1/3, but it's 4 total stats. Yeah, but are they where they want to be? No. Alright, Delver's Torch is another equipment. Look at that. We are becoming well equipped. I guess it fits for D&D. You're gonna go to the armory, whatever, and pick up your stuff, or get your stuff from the local general store. Here, don't forget your Morningstar Mace thingy. That's coming in the red review. But anyhow, 2 mana, cost 3 to equip, 5 mana total to give something +1/+1. That's terrible. But whenever it attacks, you've entered the dungeon. That's still pretty terrible. This is some recursion. If you have all of your, Cloister Gargoyles or something, if you manage to pull 5 or 6 of them in your packs, I think that's possible. I'm sorry. And if this is the card that you're going to hope will drive to victory, then you finally complete the dungeon and they all get buffed. I'm still sorry, because that's a dream that few of us will ever achieve. Not saying you can't dream big, but like, geez, how much? There's a lot of things that have to go right in that situation. Anyway, yeah, this is actually quite bad on rate. And standard, obviously 0 play. And limited, then we're going to take a look. If you have, this isn't going to be your single venture enabler that's going to get you all the way through a dungeon. You need more support there. This isn't at all carrying its own weight. So I would put this at like a 1 out of 5, maybe just like a 0.5. Again, it kind of falls into that thing. Do not be lured into playing more venture cards because you have this thing and you think suddenly this is your way to win, or this is your key card to complete a dungeon, like regardless of resources. This is not at all your fail-safe dungeon going mechanic. I don't know, you know what I'm saying. 5 mana 4/4 for an Orc Knight with Beacon of Hope. When this enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1, gain vigilance until end of turn. Nothing wrong with this. Actually, this is pretty good on raid and such. I think in limited I'd be happy taking one of these in a set common. I'll probably see a few. You play one, cool. Next turn you play another one, you attack with things. As long as you have enough little dudes hanging around. They don't even have to be little dudes. It's a solid body. And for that reason, solid thing at about a 2.5, maybe 3 out of 5. If you have enough little dudes to fill out the board before you play it. Let's see, could this you play in standard? 5 mana is still a lot. Usually we kind of want to get these crazy board swings by like turn 4, even turn 3 if possible, but mono white, I think the D&D set here is going to be pushing a lot of monocolored decks. So in particular, mono white's been known for like turn 4 really starting the swings, and then, you know, hopefully your opponent has some bad trades they can make or some bad exchanges, bad blocks, I guess. And then after that, you continue to put things on the board and keep swinging, and your opponent just never reclaims the advantage. So, or never gets to have the advantage at all, maybe had it the whole time, who knows. So I think this is just too slow for that to see. You might see one of these and then be like, huh, you're new, aren't you? So 1.5 out of 5 standard. Divine Smite. Yes, there are a few colors here that specifically hate another color. This is one of those cards that has that sort of hate built in. So, for 2 mana, instant speed, just target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls phases out. If it's a black permanent or planeswalker, though, it's exiled. So, or black creature or planeswalker. If it was permanent, damn, that'd be something. But no, black creature or planeswalker. So, for 2 mana, if you're targeting a black creature or planeswalker, if you're against a black deck, mono black, whatever sort of thing, that is an amazing effect. That is extremely good value, and this could definitely see play in standard. Probably not in best of 1 so much, even though if it's not a black thing, you just phase the thing out and it comes back to your opponent's next turn. That's still not terrible, but it's not removal. It's not where you want it to be. In fact, it's actually it's sketchy, because quite often you want to do it during your opponent's turn to surprise them. Also, because if you do it during your turn, unless you're attacking through, it does nothing. All you do is remove a blocker for a turn there. But if you do it during your opponent's turn, now that creature that's phased out, or that planeswalker that's phased out, is immune to removal at all, because it's not in the game anymore, or at least sorcery speed removal, until it comes back the next turn. So it's essentially safe. Unless you kill your opponent, that thing's coming back. And you will need like a better answer for it coming up there. So in standard, more of a sideboard card for sure, but a damn good sideboard card. So think of that how you will. I mean, definitely like 4 to 5 for sideboards. But main boards, even in best of 1, I would maybe put one of these in the deck, and probably not even that, so yeah. In limited, this card is okay. Still for 2 mana, it's not a whole lot to invest in something, but I would never run more than one of these. And again, remember that in limited, basically all the other cards that you get in whatever setting, you know, if it's draft or sealed, the rest of your cards are your sideboard. You don't have to actually construct a sideboard, you got them there. So I would leave this off to the side most often, and then if your opponent's playing something in black, yeah, put it in. Same thing. Sideboard out of 5. Okay, Dragon's Disciple has the ability to make you think you need glasses. You get a 2 mana 1/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you can reveal a dragon from your hand, or if you control one, then this enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. And dragons you control have Ward 1 as a big old like kind of aura effect. I say as a static ability, I should say. As I say aura, but enchantment auras target a specific thing, whereas I refer to auras as things that affect the entire board for the most part. So really, who's right? Wizard is right. I'm just using the wording correctly. Now then, So that's actually pretty solid. We already have the dragon decks we have in standard are largely. Is it? Of course, Goldspan Dragon makes its way in other things like Naya and even just straight up Gruul. It finds its way there quite well. But is it dragons are a thing? Of course, where they run Goldspan Dragon as well as Galidzex, as well as the Prismari Dragon. Oh my goodness, I know it starts with a G and I can't remember. Damn it. Okay, it's gonna annoy me. But anywho, so Galazeth, Prismari, yes. Okay, there's no X. Cool. So I think that if you wanted to go from Izzet to Jeskai and eventually run some of the things in there, throw in Velomach's Lorehold, why not? That's another fantastic dragon. Yeah, I could definitely see this making some plays in there, and maybe take away a bit from the flash aspect and just have more of the value. Maybe throw in Narset and try to get some more big things going on. So Narset, Magma Opus, Alvord's Epiphany, some white cards that make you, so that you're not just playing Narset and this and Velomach's Lorehold. You got options there. Lorehold Command, it's a little slow actually, but it's a solid card. So yeah, in standard, absolutely. And limited, unless you have at least 4 dragons, maybe even 5 enablers for this, I wouldn't exactly run it, because then it's a 2 mana 1/3, 1/3, do nothing. Very, very boring and just bad right there. So yeah, with a few support cards, I'll put it like a 2.5 out of 5. If you manage to get it to be a 2 mana 2/4, fantastic. If you don't do it though, it is very bad and will probably sit in your hand for quite a while, just waiting for that moment. So I can, turn 6, I can play my 2/4 and doesn't affect the board because my opponent's got a 5/5 out already. Damn. All right, but hopefully you get your dragon. So hey, you can work with that. Dwarf Hold Champion, a 2 mana 3/1. As long as it's equipped, it gets +0/+2. So for 2 mana, if you equip it, you get a 3/3, but of course you have to pay to equip it, most likely. So then it'll be more of like a 4 mana 3/3. That sounds terrible. But I already had the equipment on the board, so it doesn't really matter. It's still pretty bad. What if I don't equip it? Okay, so if you don't equip it, you have a 3/1, which is a bear shifted towards aggression, as most bears often are. So, and for the record, a bear is a 2/2. Grizzly bear, come on, you get me. You're my people, right? So, with that, unless you're playing a very aggressive deck, which is kind of difficult to do in Limited, because usually you're just kind of well-rounded sort of tempo and not exactly aggro, then I can't reasonably say that you're going to want to run this card. And equipping it is just so... the equipment right now is not anything to really talk about. Sure, if you got the big old mythic we're going to talk about later on, then yeah, it makes an equipment afterwards okay. If you got a few good equipments, alright, but I wouldn't take equipments just to enable this card. Standard is terrible. Oh yes, the thing we all love to say, flumph. I imagine that's the sound that hits when you actually just swing an axe, or I guess more so a hammer, and just kind of bounces off the top. Flumph. Anyway, it's a 2 mana 0/4 Flying Defender. That is not Wall of Omen. Well, it's Wall of Omens done incorrectly. So whenever Flumph is dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. So outside of myself getting a notification right now, we're going to continue talking. So let's see. Outside of running a mill deck where now you're dedicated to just destroying your opponent's library, not just by, milling them cards from their deck, not just by exiling them, but you want them to draw cards too, because that's what's, you're going to hit them from every angle. You're going to mill as much as you can. Ugh. I mean, this could work in that sense, and it gives you cards as well. This will definitely see play in some sort of Azorius mill. I think it's going to be Azorius, yeah. Especially because Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I'm really actually kind of hyped for that card. Even though I don't run mill decks, I want to try one and just see how it goes and just hit all the cards. I want to punish rogues, basically. And mono red, not as much because Embercleave costs 6, but I digress. Yeah, this card's bad in anything other than a mill deck, and you can't really run mill in Limited. No, unless you open 3 Tashas, which they're all rares, so good luck with that. So yeah, and this is a rare as well. So in Limited, I will just say 0.5, maybe even 0 out of 5. I don't want my opponent drawing cards, but we both draw cards, so it's fair. And do fair cards win games? Not so much. In Standard, just in mill decks, this is going to be like a 3.5, maybe even a 4 out of 5. Though of course if your opponent's playing control, this could just sit there doing nothing, so I'm gonna bring it down to like a 3. Yeah, just gonna say 3. 3 is good. Outside of mill decks, garbage. Alright, Gloomstalker. I like the thing though. Like, look at that. It's jellyfish just floating around, getting flumped. Alright. Gloomstalker, 3 mana, 2/3 if you have completed a dungeon. It has double strike. Well, that's probably not going to happen by the time you play it. Certainly not. Since the shortest dungeon has 3 steps, this is 3 mana, unless you manage to venture twice in one of your other turns. No. Let's see. Oh, wow. That I just kind of freeze and go, wow, okay. Thank you, computer. You're fantastic. So, what if we do have this coming down later on, though? Say turn 5, maybe. If you're lucky, you have completed a dungeon by then. I believe it's possible. I don't exactly know, but let's just say it is. 5 mana, 2/3 double strike. Doesn't sound that good, does it? No, not so much. But I have equipment. Why running equipment? Because I got this thing. Okay, but still, is it worth it? No. So in limited, I mean, what if you just play a 3 mana 2/3? No, 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 no. Eventually you can. No, no. This doesn't actually have the pay. No. 1 out of 5 limited, 0 out of 5 standard. Moving on. This is one where I gotta make. Don't worry, I will make this larger. Here we go, and largify. Actually, we're gonna go ahead and remove this as well to make some room because we don't need those. These don't refer to venturing. Okay, here we are. So we have the Grand Master of Flowers as well as Monk of the Open Hand. These are 2 separate cards. It's not one of those little split cards. We'll talk about the Monk first, just because it's simpler. 1 mana, 1/1. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Monk of the Open Hand. Okay, honestly, Clever Lumimancer, this kind of fits in that same sort of deck. What is it? Lean and Light Scribe is the other card that kind of goes in there to enable it. It's not bad. Notably, it only counts your second spell, so it doesn't actually just keep building up counters on the same turn. You can get 1 counter each turn, maximum. Not fantastic, but for 1 mana, like a small, very, very small investment that you can kind of just ignore later on. Yeah, this actually is quite nice. So in standard, I wouldn't be surprised if this saw some play, like 2.5 out of 5. I think get there. Now in limited, not so valuable. It's oftentimes you're going to want to spend all your mana each turn to cast like a creature. Maybe further down the line when you get to turns 4 and beyond, then you'll want to actually play a creature, or play 2 sword, like play a creature, play removal, play this, equip this, do that. You get into the more complicated turns. Before then, it's just kind of I use my mana to play this. So this isn't going to have that same sort of wild aggressive stance that it will in standard. Now, Grand Master of Flowers. So I guess in limited, it goes down to like a 2 out of 5. I think it's fine, but it's not fantastic. Grandmaster of Flowers now is a very interesting planeswalker I will name Flower Man. So Flower Man costs 4 for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. As long as Grandmaster of Flowers has 7 or more loyalty counters, he's a 7/7 dragon god creature. Not sure, but sure. Someone feel free to quote whatever lore that means. That's referring to. Referring to, yes, not referring to. It's actually referring. Thank you. With flying indestructible. Worth noting that when Flower Man, becomes a dragon, if you're lucky enough, because he's a creature, he's no longer considered a planeswalker. Damage will not remove loyalty counters. Also, it's indestructible, so damage doesn't really do too much. But in order to remove the loyalty counters at that point, you need to basically have Heartless Act to remove the counters from it, or some other sort of counter removal system, or you can just exile it somehow. But it will oftentimes, since it doesn't even have a minus ability, it will just stay a dragon until it's removed from the board. Okay, now what do the abilities do? They're both +1, so the first one, target creature without first strike, double strike, or vigilance can't attack or block until your next turn. Why, Flower Man? Why? I don't understand what this is. It's something, but it's not much. I mean, I feel like this used... No. I mean, sure, there aren't so many things that actually are immune to this effect, but it's a very narrow effect that I don't think does too much. I just don't feel like it's that good. Sure, it comes down turn 4, it goes up to 4 loyalty right away. It probably gets taken down a peg or 2. Yeah, no, I don't think that's significant. The other ability is search your library and or graveyard for a card named Monk of the Open Hand. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search the library this way, shuffle. Since this is and or, does that mean you actually get 1 from the graveyard and 1 from your library? 2 monks? And then the monks actually fill each other? That is nice. That's pretty good. The entirety of this card's review relies on you being able to get that second ability to provide enough value and, you know, sustainability, I guess, to potentially get him to a 7/7 dragon. Once you got that dragon on the board, then you have finally, like, achieved value for this card. Before then, I don't think you're doing a whole lot. So, does an endless onslaught of Monks of the Open Hand warrant this a spot in a standard deck? I am not sold on the idea. I am not. I think CGB put out a video already. I didn't watch the video because I want to just give you my honest opinion on here and not be skewed by the facts. No, by his gameplay. So, let's see here. No, I still don't like it. I like the and, of course, the fact that you can get them from the graveyard is awesome. Unfortunately, a lot of removal these days comes in the form of exile with Shadow's Verdict and Extinction Event, and Baleful Mastery, I think is the black one that exiles as well. I believe so. Or is it Devastating? I think Devastating Mastery is the white one. So yeah, I think Baleful Mastery is the one I'm referring to. Yeah, there's a lot of exile, and this just makes this card so much worse. It's nice that it pulls things out of the library, but not a fan. Of course, if you want to do this turn 4, then get the Monk of the Open Hand down turn 5. That's very slow for something that's a 1 mana 1/1. Yes, okay, 1 mana 2/2, sure. But turn 5? No. Alright, and now we have to bring this back down to size. Oh boy, hold on, I gotta find the corner, and then I gotta do that so it scales appropriately, and there we go, I like it, okay. And we'll just bring these back, because why not? Okay. That's better. Okay, Guardian of Faith. There's a 3 mana 3/2 flash vigilance. When this enters the battlefield, any number of other target creatures you control phase out. This card's fantastic. I love it. Oh my goodness. So this is, well, let's see. This is very good in an aggressive deck, and you can even use it defensively, which is great. Namely, this is your board wipe, your anti-board wipe card. So previously we've had things like Midnight Reaper in black, or in, I don't know, Knights, whatever, where if you have that on the board with a few other creatures, say you have like 3 creatures plus a Reaper, right? Your opponent goes to wipe the board, you know, Wrath of God, whatever. Okay, I'm going to draw a card for each of the creatures now and lose some life, but I'm going to do that, refill my hand, probably destroy more creatures, and refill the board with those resources. Cool. This thing says, this in response to your destroying the board, I'm going to flash this in, and all the creatures phase out. This one dies, unfortunately, but, you know, it did what it had to do. It fulfilled its purpose. And then when your turn comes around, your creatures come back. Safe. The fact that this costs 3 mana and not 4 mana, as any Croakies fans would know, means it's playable. Means it's good. You can also just use this aggressively if you'd like to. Hey, at the end of your turn, I flash in a 3/2 Vigilance. For 3 mana, fantastic value. And you can use this in response to attacks. Either you can, if your opponent's just hitting with a couple 1/1s or whatever, you can flash this into block. Worth noting, you cannot flash this in to block and then phase out your blockers, because the timing, you have to declare blocks first in order for that to matter. But after you declare blockers with this thing still in your hand, then you can flash this in and you can phase out the creatures that have already declared the blocks so that your opponent doesn't actually get some damage through. This doesn't get to participate in blocking at that point, but you still save all your creatures and, you know, put off a lot of damage. Fantastic card. Absolutely 5 out of 5 card. In Constructed, this thing is fantastic. In Limited, still a fantastic card. It's just not a bomb that's going to win you the game necessarily, but it is an amazing thing, so I say 4 out of 5 there. 5 out of 5 is something that'll win the game on its own on the spot, pretty much, which is usually reserved for planeswalkers with good abilities that can just easily scale up, or big creatures that just take control. This is not one of those, but it's still a great card. Half-Elf Monk, a 4 mana 1/4 Vigilant, and you can pay 1 on a white, tap this to tap target creature. If it was like 3 mana, I can get behind this. If the ability just said tap this thing to tap that, or even pay 1 mana and tap to tap target creature, I'd be okay with it, but not quite. The Vigilance is nice, which means that you can still like attack with this and use the ability, but I'm not quite on board. In Limited, 2 out of 5, yeah, 2 out of 5 is okay. Maybe 2.5 in the right sort of deck, where you have like 1 or 2 big creatures and you want to make sure your opponent doesn't make good blocks. In Standard, this is not playable, but it's okay. Icing Death, there's the one I kind of wanted to talk about with Mythic and Dragons and equipments and things. Okay, it's also what happens if you eat too many cupcakes on a sunny day. Not on a rainy day though, then you're fine. The rain actually counteracts the sugar. So, a 4 mana 4/3 Flying Vigilant Dragon. When Icing Death Frost Tyrant dies, create Icing Death Frost Tongue. Put it on the grill, put a little score marks in it. Trust me, it's just Ah, I have never eaten tongue. I do not intend to. Legendary, but I'm willing to change my mind. A legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls, and equip for 2. That's a whole lot of words. Alright, let's just address this first as a 4-mana 4/3 flying vigilant, and dragon does matter, as we've seen in a few cards. So that's not bad at all. In limited, this card can get there. If it was a little bit bigger, then I would say like 5 out of 5, but I'm going to put it 4.5 out of 5. It's a fantastic card. I do not feel bad first picking this any day of the week. This card's quite nice. And I mean, Vigilance is great, even though oftentimes if you try to block with this, it will die, but it's a death trigger. Okay, let's address that death trigger now. So if you want the Frost Tongue, just pull it out, just pull it out of the freezer and let it defrost on the counter for, a little while, or you can run it under cold water. Running cold water in particular, otherwise it goes up to room temperature and it's not safe anymore. Let's see, so you can equip 2, thing gets +2/+0 and can tap things. It's not fantastic, it's not an amazing equipment. The good thing is that it's essentially for free, because the 4-mana 4/3 flying vigilant, that's good on rate as it is. So all this other effect is just gravy, honestly. Wow, a lot of food going on. You put the gravy in the tongue. Okay, sorry, maybe I'm hungry, maybe not. So, as far as we're concerned with that, yeah, when that goes in like limited, it's nice. It's not necessarily going to win you the game, but you can. And the tapped creature does untap during your opponent's step, so even if you tap their big guy, they can untap with it and then attack you and tap it again, and that's annoying. Beware of the swing back. But yeah, all in all, yeah, 4.5 out of 5, still limited. In standard, I'm gonna put it at like a 3. Yeah, 3 is okay. It's not certainly the blowout card in standard that it could be. There's not really a whole equipment theme in standard right now that's sustainable, but I believe that it's a solid enough card. Maybe some dragons. Maybe this goes into the Jeskai dragons. Could be. Ingenious Smith. That's after Will Smith takes an IQ test. He's now an Ingenious Smith. So, 2 mana, 1/1. When this enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards in your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom in a random order. And whenever one more artifacts into the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Ingenious Smith. Only once each turn, though. So if you have your Cloister Gargoyle, you want to play this on turn 2, you get whatever thing, and maybe you pull out the Gargoyle, right? Because this says artifact, right? Yes, not just equipment, artifact. And then you play your Gargoyle turn 3. You have a 2 mana 2/2 and a 3 mana 0/4, and you venture. That's terrible. Let's see now. Let's see the top 4 cards. Oftentimes, the top 4 cards might not have what you're looking for, especially in limited, where you probably won't have that many artifacts. If you do, then you're probably not winning that many games. So, because the artifact value in the set isn't quite good enough to sustain this as a win con, I'll say. So, yeah, I'm gonna put this at, geez, largely 1 out of 5 there, because playing a 2 mana 1/1 is what it could end up being, which is so incredibly awful. And in constructed, same thing, kind of. Well, no, not even 1 out of 5. I don't think we're gonna do much with artifacts, honestly. I think that we don't really need to look for the Ember Cleaves, and we just kind of play differently if we have them. Otherwise, we adjust our playstyle to whether or not we have the card. We don't try to get the card so much, and we do pretty well with that. Same thing from all the Skyclaves. So even if you're running this in a white deck that already has some decent artifacts, I would not bother. Keen-Eared Sentry. A 2 mana 2/1, you have hexproof, and each opponent can't venture into the dungeon more than once each turn. Keep in mind that this card, the creature here, does not have hexproof. You, the player, have hexproof, which could be good if burn was a thing. Notably, burn is not really something we see in standard. We see aggro. We only see people getting burnt out when you're doing some kind of Magma Opus nonsense. Occasionally, Bone Crusher will go face if there's no other targets. But why, if you have this on the board, I think Bone Crusher will happily kill this thing first. So, although the first ability is quite nice, the second ability is actually sort of rubbish, unless the deck emerges, which I think could exist, where your opponent ventures so many times in a turn that it wins them the game, and this is essentially one of the few counterpieces to it. I don't believe this will see any play. I don't believe it should see any play. So for that reason, I'm out. Maybe some play in older formats where they have access to other cards like... Yes, because this is the card that breaks them. Those are the cards, the ones that break Omniscience. And was it Rooftop Storm is another thing? Allurin. We finally broke Allurin, guys. Just, if you're not familiar, don't worry about it. But I don't think this card is good at all. Yeah. I'm gonna say 0 out of 5 constructed, 0.5 out of 5 limited. It's 2 mana, 2/1 isn't terrible if you're gonna block with it, but it's still pretty bad. Moving on. Loyal Warhound, a 2 mana 3/1 with Vigilance. When Loyal Warhound enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for basic planes. Put it in the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Worth noting, this is a basic planes, not just a planes card, so you cannot fetch a Triome or a dual land. It's just straight up planes the card. But it is quite nice, actually. Especially in Standard now, there are quite a few decks that ramp. You don't just have to be going second, and if you go second, this almost hits every... This should hit pretty much every time. But if you're... Even if you're going first, there's quite a few decks, namely Sultai and other sort of... Well, actually, Gruul doesn't really play more land. They just generate treasures with Magda. Still, though, if you are playing Standard as well, then you could certainly... If you're playing like a match, best of 3 sort of thing, if you know you're going first, you can sideboard this thing out. You don't necessarily want a 2 mana 3/1 Vigilance dog. Maybe you do. Maybe you're focused on dogs. Maybe you're focused on just punching in the face and Vigilance is your thing. Sure, by all means. But this is perfectly fine to side out if you don't think the ability is going to go off. And I really do like this card. In Limited, this is fantastic. Like a 3.5 solid thing. I'm not going to go all the way up to 4 because... This isn't necessarily going to win you the game. A 3/1 doesn't really have that effect, but it's very strong for what it does. It's mana ramp in white as well, which you see very rarely. Aside from, what is it, Knight of the White Orchid? Or is it White Lotus? I think it's White Orchid, actually. Yeah. That's a good card. Okay. Minimus Containment, a 3 mana aura of all things. Yes, I'm going to show you an object and call you your enchantment. And call this an enchantment now. Yeah. I guess the enchantment is whatever's holding him inside this gemstone. Sure. So, enchant non-land permanent. The enchanted permanent is a treasure. With you can tap, sack this, and make a mana of any color. And it loses all other abilities. So, you're ramping your opponent at the cost of their best non-land permanent there. So, basically, you're turning whatever the thing is into a land. Which is nice in Limited. I wouldn't really worry about it too much, especially about ramping them later on. Because... odds are you hit the big thing, that's going to hurt a lot, and they can't really make much with the treasure. Worth noting, there are a few cards where if you actually pay their mana cost with treasure, using mana from a treasure, it actually counts that as a bonus effect, so be wary of that, especially in limited format, because that's where the effects are in this set. But I would still definitely run this as some sort of removal. I wouldn't run more than 2, and seeing as this is a common card, you'll probably see a few of them, so... Be aware of this, be wary of this if you're on the other side and you see your opponent's playing white and think, hey, they could have 3 mana removal. Maybe hold on to your bigger thing that you can't cast right now. I could discard it to this effect, but we'll see, you know. And in Standard, this will see, jeez. This might see some play, but Glass Casket already exists and does a fine job of things, and for a little more mana, you can just wipe the board. So... I think this isn't going to see any play there either, just because, worth noting, you can enchant your own things. If you have a little 1/1 that's kind of drilling around not doing anything, I enchant my own 1/1, and next turn I have extra mana. Or you have that spell that, you know, you want to cast with treasure mana. So, in Standard, I'm going to say 1 out of 5. There's a slight chance it could see play there, but I don't think so. In Limited, it's going to be more so along the lines of like a 2.5. Moon Blessed Cleric, a 3 mana 3/2. When this enters the battlefield, you may search the library for an enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle it, and put that card on top of your library after you shuffle. My friends, if this set put into your hand, I'd be excited. The fact that it puts it on top of your library, not only is it vulnerable in Standard to rogues as a deck that will mill the top card, not only do I believe that there will also be other more dedicated mill decks, like, you know, with crabs and Teferi's tutelage and such, where that top card slot is very much so at risk of being put into the graveyard. But for a 3 mana 3/2 body, I don't even think we have that many enchantments that are particularly good to grab right now. Does not make the cut. actual 0 out of 5 in standard. Not even close. If it said that it put it into your hand, then I would bump it up to like a 2. It's a decent tutor with a reasonable body. But getting that top deck spot, actually basically removing your card draw for the next turn, is incredibly painful. And also not even safe anymore. In limited, I would say that this is more so like a 2 out of 5 because the body's okay, but oftentimes you want removal. I mean, this is an enchantment, so you can sort of fetch some removal if you get it. Your opponent will see it coming, though. They have a whole turn to react to it. You know, address what's coming up. If they have any sort of counters, like, okay, you're going to try to do that next turn, like, guaranteed. Counter. So, I don't love this at all. I'm going to say 1.5 out of 5, only because worst case is a 3-mana 3/2. And it says you may, so if you're doing alright and you don't want to draw the enchantment, you don't have to use the ability. But then it's 3-mana 3/2. Alright, Nadar Selfless Paladin. This guy is a house, and by a house I mean a Dragon Knight of a house. Okay, 3-mana 3/3 Vigilance. Already perfectly fine. Whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon. Pretty nice, repeatable dungeon venturing stuff. I love it. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as your recording stuff doesn't. Hold on now, let's see. I think there may have been a little bug there, so I'm going to repeat that last part. So I like that you can use this to repeatedly go into the dungeon, and then other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. So it gives your entire board a buff if you've completed the dungeon. Worth noting that this doesn't have to be on the board when you complete the dungeon. You can do it afterwards, before, as long as you've completed one at some point in the game. That ability goes off. This card's amazing. Absolutely, this is going to be in every. I don't care, and except for the potential cheesy black, I'll give you a hint that the card that I'm worried about for venture nonsense is in black. But aside from that sort of deck, if it doesn't run any white, this is going to be a staple in any sort of venture deck if they're good. Even if they're not good, this is going to go in the decks, to be honest. So I think like probably a 2 out of 5 in standard. In limited, I will put this up to 4, honestly. Like, it's super solid there. You have enough, hopefully you don't take too many, but there are enough equipments to make this a more reliable attacker as you go further on in the game to be able to continue to attack. And it's nice that it says that it enters the battlefield as well. So you don't even have to get that first attack to go through. Just, he's here, he's ventured, get used to him. Alright, Oswald Fiddlebender. A 2-mana 2/2. You can pay 1, tap this, sack an artifact, and Birthing Pod. You find one in your deck with a mana value 1 higher, and you put it onto the battlefield. Only a sorcery speed, by the way. I don't think there are enough artifacts right now where that actually becomes worth it. There is one, I think it's one, a Corridor Monitor or something. It's an artifact where it comes into play, you get to untap something, and it costs 2, so potentially you could play like a Ginger Brute and then use this guy. Maybe it costs 3. And use Corridor Monitor as like a stepping stone to something higher up because you can untap this right away. In standard, of course, what are you really getting to with this thing? I don't think there's actually that many targets that are worth the while. As is no Kuldath the Forge Master. So for that reason, 0 out of 5 in standard. You can't play a 2-mana 2/2. Doesn't get you there. And in limited, this is, I guess I'll just say 2 out of 5 because, you know, 2-mana 2/2. Okay, maybe you can do one thing. Just make sure you know what the cards are, because you don't want to sack your artifact search and like, oh, I don't find anything, and now my artifact's gone. Damn. And then you kind of plead, hey, can I have my artifact back? I don't have any targets. Nope. Alright, Paladin class. Another class spell. Cool. For 1 mana, spells your opponent cast during your turn cost 1 more to cast. Cool. Helps limit the removal, limit interaction, which is always fun and interactive. No, actually, a decent thing for 1 mana especially. Yeah, not a bad effect at all. 3 mana, creatures you control get +1/+1. Okay, you get an Anthem for 3. 4 total, but sure. 3, alright. I like this, I like this. Whenever you attack in a turn, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike. This card is actually pretty legit, not gonna lie. This, in, of course, an aggressive deck, is nice. Unfortunately, in an aggressive deck, you probably want to play something else instead of this turn 1. Maybe you, like, on turn 2, you play a 1-drop, end this, or turn 3, you play a 2-drop, end this. Yeah, in white, because you missed your 3-drop, right? No. So many 3-mana... good 3-mana cards in white right now. It's silly. So, that being said, I guess there's nothing to do with 4 mana, so when you can either like try to level it up on 4 and then hit the thing on 5, or you try to like fill up your board a little more. I don't hate this at all. I think this could definitely be a solid like 1 or 2 of in a constructed deck. Therefore, I'm going to say 3 out of 5 in constructed. In limited, it does cost a lot to get to where you want to go, but even just having that first tick is sometimes going to be relevant. And getting up to the second one isn't necessarily going to lose you too much tempo, I don't think. So yeah, I'm going to put this at 3 out of 5. Kind of both formats. I like this. Paladins, way to go. Paladin Shield. You know how I said I like equipment that comes in equipped? Yeah, sorry. So 2 mana flash. When it enters the battlefield, attach it. Instead of equipping for 3. It does have equip for 3 afterwards, but it just comes in attached. But it only does +0, +2. So it does have that little bit where you don't have to pay the first equip. I like that. That's really nice. But unfortunately, it doesn't actually do anything on the board. It just kind of sits there and looks clunky. So 0 out of 5 both ways. Sorry. Alright, Planar Ally, 5 mana, 3/3 flying when it enters, not enter the battlefield, only when it attacks, venture into the dungeon. The fact that it is a 3/3 flyer means you'll probably get a couple attacks with this thing before your opponent deals with it or finds a way to just stop it from attacking. And either they remove it or they get a bigger creature. So I like this a lot in limited. I think this is actually super good. I'm going to put this at a 3 out of 5, maybe 3.5 out of 5 as well. Whatever I put in a Dark Paladin at, like half a step below that, basically. In standard, I'm gonna say 0. No, even Venture decks shouldn't run this because for 5 mana, you can do a lot better. You just want to do something that affects the board a lot more. Keep in mind that venturing, aside from like the last step for the Tomb of Annihilation and the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, the effects aren't that significant. So unless you have one of those two about to go off, or a huge thing where you complete the dungeon, like a lot of triggers happen, it's not all that effective. So yeah, but in limited, this is actually pretty okay. All right, Plate Armor, 3 mana. It has equip for 3, but it costs 1 less to activate for each other equipment you control. The equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has Ward 1. This is not exactly something your opponent can ignore. Giving something +3/+3 is sizable, is definitely worth noting. Giant growth, but forever. It's definitely a threat. And the fact that it can be a little cheaper later on is nice. Imagine you don't have any other equipment though. It costs 3 and you give the thing a buff. Still pretty good, not as great. In limited, I will say 2.5, maybe even a 3 out of 5. I'm willing to go higher, but I don't feel like you want to run other equipment. Like, you're not gonna throw this in there just because it makes this cost 1 less. That's not how math works. Not how value works either. Standard, 0 out of 5. It needs to go unequipped. I guess if you already have 3 other equipments, not counting this one, it has to be other equipments, then it does equip for free. But if, I don't know, if you're running that many other equipments, do you even have any creatures on the board? Like 1 at a time? Maybe you just kind of play my creature. Worth noting, if you have 4 of these on the board, then all of them are free to equip, which is kind of funny. So you're just having your 4 plate armors, whatever creature you play, and I give it +12/+12. Okay, kill spell, cool. Okay, I play another creature and +12/+12, and Ward 1. Hilarious. I'd like to see it happen. It'll probably happen at some point, but not counting on it. Portable Hole, 1 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until Portable Hole leaves the battlefield. And take a breath at the end of the sentence. Nice. So this is actually pretty solid. I think this will see some play in standard, more so a sideboard thing, because if your opponent's playing any kind of control, then this is going to do nothing most of the time, unless you're playing against Sultai Ultimatum, which is probably still going to be a thing. It's still a very strong deck, and you can hit their Willful Haven likely. Not so, like, you can hit their Omen of the Sea, but it's not really good value there. But Willful Haven basically destroys the land. That feels okay. For 1 mana, yeah. In limited, I would definitely play one of these for sure if I had it. Maybe not 2, and definitely not 3. So for that reason, like 2.5 out of 5. This is pretty good removal, but only for little things, which means it's relevant sometimes, not all the times. But yeah, it's still quite a nice thing, and I love the, you know, the flavor there. The Portable Hole reference, I think, is fantastic. Potion of Healing, 2 mana artifact. Enter the battlefield, draw a card. You can pay 1, tap, sack it, gain 3 life. So Revitalize on a stupid stick. Not on a body, just on a different card, and it's an artifact with a stick now. I don't know what I'm saying. Not not good. In limited, you could probably have the encoding blow out on you again and try to say this again, so not a good card. In limited, this is not where you want to be at all. Sure, you can draw a card if you have some sort of artifact synergy, maybe, but I wouldn't count on that. I would not run this card at all. 0.5 out of 5, because there is some cards where artifacts, like some cards that care about artifacts, some cards that want life gain. Not so many cards that want you to draw a card, but you as a player would like to draw cards, so it's okay. It's not a 0, but it's definitely not enough to even be a 1 there. In standard, no. Priest of Ancient Lore is a 3-mana 2/1. When into the battlefield, you gain 1 life, draw a card. Okay, this is like the fixed version of this, basically. I would absolutely rather pay 1 more mana, not gain as much life, but just have this thing go off. And also, you have to pay another mana anyway to sacrifice the thing, so, like, this is just what I would rather play. 2 out of 5 limited. I feel like it's fine. Standard, no. No, but, yeah. Rally Maneuver. 3 mana, instant speed, target creature gets +2/+0, and gets first strike, up to 1 other target creature gets +0/+2, and gains lifelink. Keep in mind, this is 1 other target, so you cannot target the same creature and give it all the buffs. You have to split it up, and for that reason, I don't like it too much. In limited, I'll say like a 2 out of 5. It's not a bad combat trick. You do get the lifelink on a creature, so you know, probably survive on the turn or two, get a little healing if that matters at all, and then you just get a little more sustainability. But it's not going to necessarily be enough to push you through all the other turns. You want to use it for 1 good blowout turn to, you know, catch your opponent off guard, and then you need that turn to really steamroll you. Otherwise, it's not going to get there. It'll fall off quite quickly. And in standard, this is a 0 out of 5. 5 as 1 is just kind of better and cheaper. Even though it doesn't get buffs, it just makes things live. Okay, Ranger's Hawk, a 1-mana 1/1 flyer. Okay, sure, this is fine. Pay 3 and tap this. Tap another untapped creature you control to venture into the dungeon. That is a lot to put into an effect that says just venture, which I scryed 2 this time. Yeah, worth it. Also activate only as a sorcery. Damn, so you actually have to deny yourself 2 attackers. I guess if they have vigilance, you could have attacked first. Okay, but this is pretty terrible. Now, evaluating this on just the fact that it's a 1/1 flyer for 1 is alright. For that, 1.5 out of 5 in limited, because sure, it's the rate is okay. X for an XX creature is there. However, and it's flying, which is good, so it passes the vanilla test, as many people would say. But a 1/1, yeah, 20 turns later, I managed to kill him with the Ranger's Hawk. Is what some people would like to say. But I don't think they can say that. Standard is 0 out of 5. Alright, Steadfast Paladin, a 2-mana 2/2 lifelink. Standard, this is useless. Limited, this is alright, 2 out of 5 because it's a bear. Teleportation Circle, 4-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under owner's control. There's not a whole lot of ETB abuse going on in Standard right now. Like I said before, Charming Prince doesn't really see a lot of play. Yorion sees some, but this Yorion also can hit any non-land permanent on your side of the board. So often there are quite a few enchantments, namely Omen of the Sea, Omen of the Sun, occasionally. If you're actually running white, you can flicker Willful Haven. No real reason to do that though, but you can. What else can you do? Other creatures, of course, there's new creatures. Namely, also Yorion hits as many things as you want in 1 turn. For the turn, versus this is, okay, I'm going to pick this one this turn. Next turn I'll pick that one. But you have unlimited uses of the Mazemind Tome. Yeah, true. But for 4 mana, I think I'd just rather play another Mazemind Tome and draw another card and maybe get into life later on. So, this is nice. Also, we already have Thassa that can do a very similar thing and that sees 0 play. So, in limited, in limited, this is actually probably terrible. So, I'll give it 1 out of 5 still, because there are a few enter the battlefield effects that can be relevant, but having a 4 mana basically do nothing. That's a lot of mana to do nothing. In standard, similarly 1 out of 5, because these sort of cards don't really see a whole lot of play, but when the decks they do, they can do some pretty wacky things. The Book of Exalted Deeds is a 3-mana legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, you make a 3/3 White Angel creature token with flying, and you can pay 3 and tap this and exile it to put an enlightening counter on target angel. It gains platinum. You can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game and you do this only as a sorcery. So it makes you a Platinum Angel, and in order to do that, it can potentially make its own Angel if you gain 3 more life, which is nice, it kind of heals itself. However, I would never run this outside of either a dedicated life gain deck or a dedicated Angel deck, because don't think you're going to just incidentally, oh, I'm going to get 3 life, and I'm going to do this and that, and it's going to be great. Also, the creature that you put the counter on to have you not lose the game is not indestructible. So unless you find some other way, which you certainly can, to keep the thing alive, there's plenty of removal in the format right now. There's not a great chance it's going to survive for too long. Maybe you manage to use this to buy yourself a bunch of turns against aggro until your opponent says, I'm going to Bone Crush and Bone Crush and Bone Crush, and your creature's gone, and since you're at negative 300 life, you now lose the game. Because, yeah. Now, of course, if you have a flying angel, there's a decent chance you can chip away at your opponent, but do you want to attack with it? I don't know. Maybe they flash something in. Maybe they got a blocker already. The Phoenix of Ash is looking mighty tasty. So, yeah. Not really too keen on this thing outside of those sort of decks. And even in those sort of decks, largely I like just the passive ability, where you could just start making 3/3 flyers every turn. That's pretty sweet. Let's see, so in Standard, despite all those things that I said about not running them in other decks, I think this is actually a 3.5 out of 5 there. It could definitely be good. Worth noting, Legendary, only one on the board at a time. Only one on your side of the board at a time, I should say. In Limited, I'm going to call this a 2 out of 5. You obviously need the life gain. You need to gain at least 3 life, otherwise it does nothing. And you also need to have angels if you have them. I would not put this in your deck unless you have at least, at least 7 to 8, hopefully more, life gain effects that don't put you so back on value that without this you just lose the game. It's going to be tough. I don't even know if that's possible. So for that reason, this is definitely not like a pack one, pick one sort of thing. This is something where you can pass on this and not feel too bad. But if you get some angels, if you get the one that lets you venture, if you get some other thing that lets you do more things, then go ahead and do the thing. Yeah, that makes sense. That's coherent. Okay, Veteran Dungeoneer. 4 mana 3/4 on ETB. You venture. There's the venture stuff over that way. Standard, useless. Limited, okay. 2.5 out of 5. It can survive a little bit longer. Moving on. White Dragon. 6 mana 4/4 flyer, Cold Breath. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature from controls. Doesn't untap during its next untap step. More so a blue effect, but I'll take it. I mean, the actual breath coming out of this thing in the artwork is blue, so it's like a kind of like a white skin blue dragon. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. White skin blue breath. Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh reference there. So for this thing, it's pretty solid. I'll say even like 4 out of 5 in Limited, because you get a 4/4 flyer that keeps something down for a turn, so you can almost certainly attack with this thing and get some value there, and attack with some more creatures if you want to. Yeah, this could very, very easily swing the game and keeps the pressure on, because it's a big flyer you have to deal with. And it's a dragon, so it enables dragon synergies there. In Standard, no, this is too slow. These effects never actually seen you play. It's not that good. So Standard, actually solid 0 out of 5. But in Limited, 4. Interesting how that works. You hear something on watch. The name that you're not going to remember when you're trying to academic probation. What's that called again? You're aware of your surroundings? What? No? Okay. 2 mana, instant speed. Either creatures you control get +1/+1, or deal 5 damage to target attacking creature. Actually a solid thing. I don't hate this at all. This is pretty legit. In Limited, yeah. The fact that it only costs 2, and you can use this offensively or defensively, pretty well, like as pretty good as removal, and pretty good as a buff too. Like a small little buff, but still enough to make your opponent make some unfortunate blocks after you play it. Absolutely, I think this is a 3.5 out of 5 card. This is actually pretty solid there. Even in Constructed, this could see some play. Usually the second thing where you have to target an attacking thing doesn't actually make the cut. You rather just have destroy, exile, remove the thing from the board, instead of, well, when you attack with it, then I can get rid of it. That's not quite how this thing works. So for that reason, I would run this only in an aggressive deck, but where you can make use of the first ability. But I could certainly see your opponent maybe attacking with something with like an Anax if it's strong enough, and then you set off the traps like, oh dang, and now I swing back for lethal. Yeah. So 2.5 out of 5 in Standard, and solid to say 3.5, like 3.5 in Limited. Yeah. And you're ambushed on the road for 1 mana. You either make a retreat, and return target creature you control to its owner's hand, or you stand and deliver. Target creature gets +1/+3 until end of turn. So largely, you're saving a creature either way. It just depends on if you can make if your creature can survive with the buff from the second part, then you'll do that. If it can't, or if it has a really damn good enter the battlefield effect, you'll do the first one. Also worth noting, not so much in limited, but in standard, if your opponent's going to play some sort of Bone Crusher, you would potentially rather make a retreat, because if the target's not there, it counters the stomp, versus, and then your opponent can't play the Bone Crusher because the card just goes to the graveyard, versus buffing your creature. Sure, it survived the stomp, but your opponent now has the Bone Crusher that has adventured. The effect still resolves and whatnot, and they can play it. So pseudo counter for that sort of thing. That being said, this card's terrible. 0 out of 5 all around. Yeah, all around. And for that, we are done. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this one. Took a little bit over an hour. I'm gonna try to go faster next time, but this is how life is. Life is long for some people, not always pleasant for others. And before we get too sad and down in the dumps, I'm gonna take a sip of water and outro. Thank you very much for tuning in. Good night or good morning, depending on where you are in the world, but as always, good luck.